interesting question. There are a lot of obvious differences between experts and novices, but there are a lot of really non-obvious differences that I find a lot more interesting. And it has to do a lot with how people process information. So novices tend to focus on the details. They'll see all of the details, but they won't know what details are important or irrelevant or relevant. They won't know how the details fit together into patterns. So they'll often, the way that they'll work will tend to be, it will seem a little bit random if you have a lot of experience. Experts process information in several ways that are very different from novices. So there's a way in which let me think about this for a moment. When they are presented with a lot of information, they tend to, their brains will pre-filter things that have previously been defined or determined to be irrelevant. So it makes their cognitive load a lot less because they literally do not notice a lot of the things that happen to be irrelevant. They also tend to notice patterns, which means that where a novice will be trying to juggle 20 different things, the expert will have seen that this is basically just one idea with 20 pieces to it, and so they'll be able to think about that. Again, it reduces the cognitive load. The speed of how they process as well, experts are a lot faster, but it's not just speed, there's also, thinking. Yeah, so experts also process a lot more quickly, but it's not just the raw speed of processing, it's also that they tend to parallelize things that they're very familiar with. So as long as it has gone to the automatic part of the brain, then they'll be able to pull in information in parallel, whereas novices will be trying to process serially. Perceptual learning is a field, it's a subfield of psychology, and it's a field that looks at it's a field that looks at how we gain expertise or mastery. So usually when we talk about expertise and mastery, we'll talk about very concrete things like knowing and remembering facts or being able to execute specific sequences of steps. And with perceptual learning, what we're talking about is how we gain intuition based on experience. So this isn't mystical intuition. It's really that over the course of several, usually years, our brains will have picked up the differences that actually matter and know what to discard. So a great example that I saw on a TV show once was the TV show hosts went out into the streets with a billboard or like a placard with different pictures of the US penny. And the thing is, they switched a bunch of details on the penny for each one. Like they would put, they would swap around the little, I don't even know what it says, right? In God we trust. They made the little man change directions. There's a year somewhere, and they changed the location of this. And they asked people, which one is the right one? And basically nobody had any clue because it doesn't matter, right? And we don't differentiate which way the guy is turning, because as long as it's the right size, the right weight, the right type of metal, it's the right coin. So it's the way, perceptual learning is the way in which our brain filters through and determines what dimensions of difference are important to pay attention to. When I started studying biology, and I didn't choose biology with any great purpose. It was interesting, it was kind of scientific. I figured at the end there's going to be some interesting work to do. When I started university, I got my first computer. And so I started playing around with a little bit of programming, and I had, a calculus class that required that we do programming in Mathematica. So I was introduced to programming a little bit throughout my bachelor's degree. By the end of my studies, I realized that I was not a good fit for lab work. It was very, very slow. Like, the theory is fascinating. It's so interesting, and the applications are phenomenal, but actually waiting for the PCR machine to finish it was so tedious. So I kind of ended up deciding not to do that. I finished my degree program 6 months early, and so I had 6 months left over where I could do whatever I wanted, and I took all programming classes for those 6 months, and by the end of it, I was like, this is interesting enough. So I started getting, little paid jobs from friends where I would fix something for them. And after, I guess, a year or so of little jobs, I started getting bigger jobs. And at some point, I knocked on the door at some startup and said, hey, do you need help in your tech department? I wasn't like trying to be a programmer. I just wanted to do something programming related. But within 3 months, I was writing production code, which is a terrifying thought. And over the first, I spent 3 years at that company, and I feel like I became a developer during those 3 years, where I was noticing things that were really painful about the development process, and then I'd go buy as many books as I could afford and read as much as I could understand, and then try to implement it at work. And over time, I've stumbled onto all of the extreme programming processes, and so over time, those really being obsessed about those helped because I gained a lot of experience in writing code that was a lot more reliable, a lot more understandable, a lot more empathetic, and that got me better and better jobs.